we can win the ones we meant to win. You know,
well, that's the key to it. You've been saying it all season.
You didn't want a storyline on the Monday following the Titans like you've lost to the Wooden Spooners again. That's twice in 1 year.
This is a team that has been in the top four for most of the season, and you don't get there unless you deserve it. So congratulations to the Warriors. That try to me is the try of the year so far. I mean, I know that the Raiders one was...
Tigers was pretty good.
Yeah, but he stands up, the guy, and just sheer pace and speed and swerve and go...
He's got unbelievably burn pace.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
Big League Tuesday, Tony Kemp in studio with us again. 25 very proud tests for the Kiwis. Former Warriors coach, played his league in both hemispheres. There, you can see, should be up by now, the table on the side of the screen. Raiders, Storm, Dogs, Wars, there's your top four. Broncos, Sharks, Panthers, Roosters, there's your 8. Dolphins and Manly have a kind of a chance of making that 8, or between them two and the Roosters, as to who's going to get 8th spot. Tony, let's start with the Warriors because one more win and it is top 4. So after a speed wobble of 3 losses and 5 and a big loss of form, a couple of gutsy wins over the last 2 weeks against the Dragons and also comfy away to the Titans. So much for the bogey team and everything. One more win will secure it. And that could be the Eels at home this coming Friday night. Manly after that may not mean anything in the end, and it might be a good chance to rest some players before the finals. But this is a team that has been in the top 4 for most of the season, and you don't get there unless you deserve it. So congratulations to the Warriors.
Yeah, and look, Manny, I think we spoke about it last week, like go out there and really dominate the Titans and put them to the sword and bury them and take those 2 points out of your second home. I guess what they're saying, they have more Warriors fans at the Titans ground than they did the Titans fans. So, and the way that the draw's going, over the next 2 weeks, Marty, it really is in their hands. They get this win against the Eels on Friday night and then go to Manly. It doesn't really matter whether they win or not because they'll be in the 4. So
there you go.
Destiny really is playing out in their favour to finish in that 4th position. And like you said, congratulations. I think especially the last 2 weeks, St George was a bit wobbly before they lost all their HIAs, but last week, I just thought they were very, very good across the board against a Titans side who subsequently lost their coach on Monday and are looking to rebuild for the future. Who knows where a couple of their players are going to end up, but at the moment it's all the Warriors. If the All Blacks hadn't lost, the Warriors would have been all across the news for the rest of the week. Yeah,
and again, we said this before the Dragons game, it was just about getting the 2 points. That's all it was about. And so now comfortably got to start looking again towards the finals in a couple of weeks and thinking, okay, what possible combinations, permutations are there, who the Warriors are going to play and so forth. But yeah, 32 points is always impressive away from home. And I just like the fact that, that win against the Dragons to me propelled this win as well, because I think their confidence from that win meant that they went there going, hey, we are a good team. We can actually win these games.
Yeah, well, we can win the ones we meant to win.
Well, that's the key to it. You've been saying it all season.
You didn't want a storyline on the Monday following the Titans like you've lost to the Wooden Spooners again. That's twice in 1 year. And of course, you come into this week buoyant to go and with your last home game sold out. I think it came up this morning that the sold out signs went out.
It's great, isn't it?
So it's all headed to a really good finish for regular season for them before they start to build to get into the back end, which is a real important part for us, and finishing in top 4, getting those 2 home lives. Whether or not they can win the first one and go straight through to the major semi is yet to be seen. But you look at the way that teams have been playing lately, it's going to be a definite step up. I think this game against Canterbury and Penrith on all accounts, a bit of a plunge went on Canterbury earlier in the week because someone found out that Ivan was going to rest all his players. So you think Canterbury will secure that game on the weekend. That means Penrith have lost 3 in a row before they go on. They're finishing outside the 4. And you've got those permutations of Canberra, how they won against Penrith last week. Melbourne's just doing enough to get across the line.
Yep.
Man, it's really shaping up to be a hell of a final series, and there's no better position for the Warriors to be in when they hit the finals if they're in 4th position.
Why do you say that?
Well, the thing with finishing in 4th is that playing that game at home. You know what I mean? So getting that first game at home, and you are playing to get into the major semi in that first round. So you get that.
Wouldn't they be away at the Raiders that first thing? If they play 4 plays 1, doesn't it?
1 plays 4, 2 plays 3.
Yeah, but the top seeds get the home game, don't they?
Yes, that's correct.
So the Warriors wouldn't be at home.
But sorry, I'm talking about the next game. If they don't get the Canberra game, they get that next one at home.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yep.
Sorry, and that next one, that's they're going into that first round with a major semi in mind.
Yeah. That's the carrot. You win, you get a week off, you have one more game to go to the grand final.
That's exactly right. And that week off, getting your players right, is what you really want. That's an ideal state. The second one, if they don't, and then they've got to play, at least they're playing at home, and we know how well they are going at home.
Yep.
And that's the difference about finishing in that top four, So it's, look, I thought about coming in to see you today and whether or not you could make some bold predictions, but it's so unpredictable at the moment. And I'm not just talking on the field, I'm talking off the field. Like, there's more action happening off the field that the NRL are worried about than this run into the finals, the Brandon Smith story.
We've got to talk about that.
The Canterbury story. And what we should be talking about in this country and what should be on everyone's lips is the Warriors rolling in, hopefully after they beat Parramatta on Friday night in 4th position. It's going to be a good week in New Zealand if they do. If they do get this game, the next couple of weeks are going to be great.
Well,
great weeks.
There'll be top four, and then you're building into the All Blacks versus the Springboks at Eden Park. So it's going to be a hell of a couple of weeks in New Zealand for sport, as you say.
The only problem you got, Marty, and that's the reason I didn't come in here all bullish, is that you've got Parramatta on one hand, they're out. Okay,
nothing to play for.
The issue that we have the issue that I have that Parramatta bring to the table is that you've got the incumbent number 7 for Australia fighting for a spot in the green and gold in an Ashes tour to Great Britain, and by all accounts, I think he will hold that jersey if his form is good enough before they get kicked out.
They won't replace him with Ivan? Or
no, look,
Nathan,
I think over the next 2 weeks, the 7 jerseys his to lose. So if he comes up against the Warriors and the Warriors give him an absolute telling, I think he probably loses that jersey to Nathan Cleary. If he beats the Warriors, a top 4 side, and Mitchell Moses' name is all over that game, I think he holds that jersey. So you've got that problem. Yeah. The other problem you got when you go to Manly is it's no matter what they say about Daly Cherry Evans going to Sydney City, the Trebojevic is leaving, the coach being sacked. It's Daly Cherry Evans' last game at Manly. You know what I mean?
So it means something to them, for sure. And they won't be playing for a playoff spot.
The thing with both these teams is you just don't know what you're getting week in, week out with them. So you look at how the Parramatta played last week, like who picked that? The amount of points, the tries that they were scoring were just unbelievable. And then the same can be said for Manly. Like, who thought that they'd go up there and tell the Dolphins up, So,
well, no one actually tackled in that game. That was a 90-point game.
Well, and that's a scary part about it. It could become a game of touch and it could be high-scoring games. And there are a couple of players, but both of them in the 7 jerseys, they've got something to play for. So I don't think it's clear-cut. Again, I don't think it's the Warriors walking on Friday night and yes, we're in the 4. I think Parramatta are going to offer up a bit of a game for them. And I think if it does come down to Manly and they've got to win to get in the 4, well, that's what I mean. The next couple of weeks are going to be pretty good to be a part of.
How do you look at that top 4 at the moment? Are the Raiders the minor prems for you? Their 2 last games, by the way, people, are Tigers and then Dolphins away.
You'd think so.
So I think they secure it against the Tigers, don't they?
I think the way that they fought against Penrith. I thought watching Penrith in that first half, I thought, Penrith are going to do Canberra. They're clinical, and then Yale comes off the bench and he gets into that groove. And I thought, look, Nathan and Yale, they're just going to take over here. And then Canberra, like they've done all year, they just love getting in a scrap, And you can't make it a scrap with Canberra. Nathan Cleary be having nightmares over the last 2 weeks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you got to take it back to 3 weeks. He kicks the 40-20 to get him into the overtime to win it. And then the next 2 weeks against Melbourne, and of course he kicks it and it gets pulled back, and then Harry Grant scores a try. Then Canberra, he kicks it, hits the post, and then misses the tackle, and they go 100 metres to score a try. Again, playing devil's advocate, for me it says those sides are ready to play finals football, because arguably the 3 games that Penrith have played are all semi-final.
They look like finals games to me. They did. I mean, the standard, the quality of it was right up there, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I think Ivan may have bit the bullet and said, well, we're not going to finish in the 4, and obviously, so let's rest some players and get them ready. We're going to have a real shot at it, and it's going to be a massive effort for Penrith to win it from outside the 4. But I think, when you're talking a Canberra deserved of the minor premiership, I think so. Melbourne's the team that they got to beat to the line.
Yeah. The Storm's last 2 games, by the way, Roosters, Broncos last game.
Yeah, and of course the Broncos got everything to play for because they can still make the 4, and of course the Roosters, they can still make the 8. So does Bellamy get the same, bite of the cherry as what Ivan does by saying, like, do I get the rest of my players? By design, he gets to rest Harry Grant anyway because he's out suspended for 2 weeks.
Yep.
So can the Melbourne win those 2 games without Harry Grant? It's a big ask. You ask the question, Canberra the minor premiers, I'd say they'd be favourites at the moment.
What about the Dogs? Where do you look at? I mean, they've actually, this is their last 5 games. 1 lost, 1 loss. Those 3 losses, Tigers, Roosters, Tigers, Roosters, Storm. So, I mean, this is a team that's just limping its way into that last 4, isn't it? Well, they've got enough points, but they're not playing well.
They were sitting at the top of the table before they brought Galvin in. Sexton's leaving, and he was, him and Marnie at hooker were the 2 hooker half combination that got them to the top spot before they brought Galvin. And Galvin's only won 50% of the game since he's been brought in the side. Hasn't really looked comfortable in that position since he's really been in, apart from the game they played against the Warriors in the wet. And when you're looking at Canterbury again, for me, like, a lot has to go their way. I think for them to win this year, I don't think Galvin comes in and he's a premiership winning halfback. You could go back and say the same thing about Benji Marshall, but can you see Galvin pulling off a Benji Marshall type play down that left edge?
I think they'll wobbly the Dogs, mate.
When he kicked that flick pass, made an 80-metre break, get that flick pass back to Pat Richards, who scored in that corner. I don't think he's a Benji Marshall. I think Phil Gould wants to take those words where he said he's the best teenager that I've ever seen. When you're looking at Daly, you're looking at Brad Fittler, you're looking at Andrew Johns,
Bradley Clyde.
I don't think Galvin's in any. He don't wear any of their boots, and I played in that era. He's not someone I'd go into a game and go, oh, that 18-year-old kid Galvin, got to be really careful of him. So we're Canterbury at the moment. Let's be brutally honest. They're not in good form.
No, they're not. I mean, as I said, they've lost 3 of the last 4.
They're limping into the semis. Yep. I think if you're a Canberra, a Melbourne, a Warriors supporter, maybe a Broncos supporter,
Well, how's Reece Walsh's form at the moment?
Well,
I mean, that try to me is the try of the year so far. I mean, I know that the Raiders one was
Tigers was pretty good.
Yeah, but that one though, where he stands up the guy and just sheer pace and speed and swerve and go.
He's got unbelievably burn pace. When he puts the turbo on and goes past players at a great rate of knots. It's not really what he does; it's what the defensive line does that catches everyone out, because he goes straight to a bloke who doesn't see him coming, and he makes the bloke on the inside panic, and he gets him on both sides of the ruck. He either gets him by burns it by speed, gets him on the outside when he throws that pass, or he throws it back on the inside and they get him up the middle of the park. So
no, he's in real good form at the moment. He's great to watch.
They've got him down as the number 1 in the Australian jersey, so he's going past some pretty good ones to get that at the moment.
How's he playing for Australia, mate? God, they're just about
he's a Kiwi.
I know.
Mate, Ken, that's another conversation. Like the international game at the moment, if you're Samoan or Tonga at the moment, you think going into next year's World Cup, one of those 2 teams will be the favourite.
All right, so looking at the Broncos, Sharks, Panthers, all of those teams, let's just assume the top 4 stays as a top 4, which it probably will. Broncos, Sharks, Panthers. Are those teams capable of doing what no team has outside the top 4? Is one of those teams strong enough to do it? I mean, you say that the Panthers want to have a real crack at it. You don't want to be the team that loses in the first round of the playoffs, ends up getting a home game against them.
I guess the question is, when you look at the competition, are there any teams that are good enough to knock off Canberra and Melbourne? You got to think about Melbourne. When they played Penrith, they still had a number of players out. When you look at Canberra, both teams were pretty much at full strength, and they got Penrith. Like, you don't think Canberra were going to get them?
No, 16-6 down. I thought the game was over, mate. I really did.
In those type of games. So for me, it's like, do you think if those 2 teams finish 1 and 2, they do go through the first week, they get a bye. Is there a team below them that can get them on the major semi?
Yeah.
That's if the Warriors don't beat them in the first round.
Sure.
Okay. So the only team that I can see that can beat those 2 teams in the next round is Penrith. And the other teams, look, Brisbane, unless they can put 50 points on because they're going to leak 50, and I don't see a Canberra or a Melbourne leaking 50 points.
Not finals, no, not come finals. You think? I mean, let's just know that the defence is all going to step up as well. Are the Warriors a genuine threat in that top 4, or is top 4 going to be a fantastic season? I mean, this to me is a big overachievement. Making top 4 is amazing. Are they good enough to go on and actually make the grand final.
You're giving all the Warriors fans something to fall back on here, Marty.
But I mean, I do. But I mean, look, I don't. I just look at the team, and I don't think that when I watch games like Penrith versus Canberra, I don't think the Warriors are at that level. I don't think they are.
No, not. Look, I don't. I don't think they are as well. I think everyone's spoken about how cushy their draw's been all year. And they have had the best draw throughout the season. And even when you're looking at the way that the games play for the top 4 sides over the next 2 weeks, the Warriors still have the best draw.
Yeah, it's favourable. Yeah, we've been saying that all year.
So are they
beat the teams they should be beating?
The top 4?
Yeah, they deserve to be in the top 4, of course, because
so
you don't
give them the big tick for that. Can they win it against the likes of a Canberra or Melbourne with the current side? So it's going to be a tough ask, but it's never a no. Because as you know, they said the same thing in 2008 when a Kiwi team ran out against arguably the best Australian side that ever graced that Hullo turf. And what happened? You
were jelly wobble on the sideline from what I remember.
100%.
Yeah.
So, look, I think if they can get through the first round, they get a week off, the Warriors have a definite chance. I think the 2 favourites are Canberra and Melbourne. I think that's, at the current rate, that's what the final looks like. Is there a team to throw in as a smoky? Penrith, definitely.
Brandon Smith, you mentioned Brandon Smith earlier. I'm always pained when I read stories like this because it just, you're sitting there on the sideline and you think you've got everything. It looks to the layperson, you've got everything going in your life. You do this as a job. You've got a fantastic salary. You've got another X amount of years of your career. You've got a great personality, and you're probably going to be picked up as a guy that's going to do punditry afterwards. You've probably got another 20 or 30 years left in the game. Why would you do this? And look, he's innocent until proven otherwise, obviously.
I guess it's a little bit of a wave that was continually moving with Brandon Smith. Goes out of Melbourne. Apparently there's some issues down there. Into the Roosters, pushed out of there, ends up at South. Retrospect gets done for something that happened at the Roosters, and now finds himself facing some pretty dubious stuff that's come out in the press. Other part is it's a press story, so like you don't know the full extent of it.
No.
But the question that I have is like, who is his role models? You know what I mean? Like the kid come from Waiheke. Okay, so he come from Waiheke. They call the Waiheke Rams over there. They play on beautiful little spot.
I've actually been out there with the kids playing football there.
They got a nice little history going out there, and I've got a question like, what do you think? How do you think your parents feel? Your mum, because his mum brought him up. But who are your mentors? Like, who are the guys that actually say, mate, pull your head in? Like, remember, I remember sitting in the back of a van one day, Marty, and I came back, I was 22, and I couldn't see it. And I got shoved in the back of the van. I had 15 of my mates with me. And one of them, who was the boss that you might know, his name was Alan Sharrock.
I know him.
And he said, we're in the van. And I jumped in the van. And there's a seat on the van that you never want to get put in because you know you're going to get a tune-up. And he said, you're sitting there. And I was like, oh no, what have I done? And he basically said to me that night, I was 22 at the time, we're coming back from the urinary pub, it was over Christmas, and he said, who do you think you are? And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, mate, who do you think you are? Don't you ever forget where you're coming from? When he said that, I actually rolled over. I was ready to get hit by the boys because you got to smack.
Yeah, for sitting in that seat.
And I'll never forget it. He just said to me, basically what he was saying, don't forget where you come from. These are all the guys that I look up to. I was the youngest in the bunch of 15 guys. These are all the guys that I look up to. And he said, we know who you are, and you've been a dickhead, mate. You're acting out. We don't behave like that. So when I read this thing about Brandon Smith, I'm sort of sitting here going, where are your mentors, mate? Like, where are the guys that are saying, where the guys saying, mate, pull your head in. Like, don't forget where you come from. You on $500,000 plus a year. You're thinking, if it is gambling and drugs, if it is, where did you get to that? Where's the blokes that are telling you, let's get you fixed?
Yeah,
because nothing's forever.
No,
and we all know people that have got addictions.
Oh, okay, totally, mate. Yep.
But for me, where are those people? Like, where is his manager? That's the first thing. They're the blokes that run to the hill. You know what I mean? Like, what is your manager doing for you? If it has gone through Melbourne, it has gone through Sydney City, and it's come out here at Souths. Mate, if I was giving anyone advice and my manager had let that happen and it's come out now, I'd be seriously looking at at that person going.
It's a
"Was
sad
that the
story
right
when you
person?"
put it like that, isn't it? Because it's such huge opportunities that don't come around that often. And he's not an arse of a guy.
No.
Every time I see him, I like him. I love his attitude. I love his humour. He seems really popular amongst all the other players.
Well, he is, Marty. But then that's what it's a fickle community, innit? Like, you may be the flavour at the moment, but people, they just ain't going to touch you when you're too hot to touch.
Yeah.
And you can continually come out with all the one-liners and I think Peppenhausen's on $1 million too much and all that sort of stuff. And it is funny at the time and people don't want to listen to that. But, mate, when you continually burn your bridges and you keep burning them, people don't build them for you anymore. And that's what I'm saying. Like, where are those people to say, mate, stop burning them? Like, let's build. You can rebuild it. Let's build it. So, I think there's a lot more to play out in this. I hope he sorts his shit out. To be honest, I don't like seeing it. The first thing I thought about was there goes our hook for the Kiwi team coming up. We're already losing all of our players to Samoa and Tonga, and now we're handing players up because of all these misdemeanors. So, hopefully Brandon can get it sorted. And if there is someone out there that's looking after him, man up, go and tell him, pull his head in.
Let's go back to the international thing and finish with that, because as you say, I mean, this is another big issue, isn't it? And I can understand the angst over there about state of origin, and there's past greats saying it shouldn't be called state of origin anymore. And I agree with that, because the whole point of state of origin was a selection process for the Australian team. That's how it started. But has it evolved into something other than that now? And do you believe that these players have a right to decide who they want to choose to play for internationally? Because that's always been a stick in the mud for me, that you choose origin and therefore you can't play for your own country. At the same time, I've always thought this is an Australian competition. It's nothing else other than two interstates playing against each other in Australia. But has it now become too big for that? And it is actually should be the best players in the competition regardless of... Okay, there you go.
Marty,
right.
it will be. It may change. The name may change. It might be country of origin, but they're not going to change that concept. As long as it's a maroon jumper and a blue jumper.
Yeah, it's making too much money for them to change it.
And it's making so much money, and it's driving cultures and countries as far as, look at every Kiwi is either maroon or blue.
Yeah, for sure.
The black jersey, for me, those days where it's just about the black jersey, they're gone. So, it's the people that are going to suffer here, the teams that are going to suffer here is New Zealand. You know what I mean? So New Zealand, where we had the pick of the Island boys, they didn't have an international game to go to. I think it's great for the international game that they do now and that they can go and play for their countries. New Zealand needs to really do some work around that. And I think what New Zealand can do is they can save origin. I think New Zealand can save origin and work alongside the NRL by understanding the pathways and building a pathway back here in New Zealand. Because the problem and the fundamental problem that you've always had is, and I've been saying this since 2009 when I had an argument with Melbourne Inga, is you're picking Kiwi boys in your origin jersey, but how does that make a Queenslander kid feel when they've been through your system and their grandfathers and their fathers have been through that system and they are now being left out because of an island boy that had moved over there because their parents went to work? You know what I mean? So in the true essence of origin that started in 80, it isn't that anymore.
No, it's not that.
So I think the name will change, but I think what we really need to do is we need to really work alongside the NRL to fix that pathway up in New Zealand, because the other problem that we have is that New Zealand is going to become weaker and weaker.
All right then, 2 rounds to go. Warriors sitting in 4th spot. It's been a hell of a season so far. Call it. Do they stay inside the 4? I think that they win this weekend, and I think it's rubber stamped. Yeah. I think they beat the Eels at home.
I'd like to think they can win Friday night home, full crowd. I've got my question mark over Mitchell Moses.
That's the doubt.
Well, we've had some luck with injuries. Hopefully he goes there in the first 5 minutes and they bring on a front row to play halfback. Maybe even Dylan Brown comes on and plays. He doesn't want to play there anymore and just hands it up to us.
Time we talk next Tuesday, we could be going top 4. Here we go.
I think so. Let's go. Up the wires.
This is the DSPN.